and welcome to the second edition of this exercise. And of course, what we are doing here is preparing you to understand why business fail. And with this kind of information, it means that you will be able to leverage it back into the business community in terms of providing the solution. Now, a few years ago, a little over 10 years ago, we started to do a research into business failure. Why? Because what we saw is that 20% of business startup fail annually, and 50% fail by year 5, and only 33% survive after the 10 years life cycle. For us, that was a very worrying issue to see many businesses are starting, millions of dollars are being pumped into the business process, and depending on where the capital comes from, many businesses are unable to pay it back, and a high level of frustration kicks in. As we go into today's program, we will look at that. But what we have been able to do is to build up what is known now as the business success ecosystem. Now, what exactly is the business success ecosystem? This ecosystem represents a number of important pillars. For example, under this ecosystem, you will learn about the proactive leaders ecosystem. And here is where we talk not only about the process of thinking ahead, seeing beyond problems, and taking informed action to achieve desired results, but we talk about the strategic, tactical, and operational leadership. And as an entrepreneur, as a business leader, it is necessary for you to apply this process into business. As a business leader, you don't want to wait until you have a need for capital, then to start thinking about it, because then might be too late, and too late shall be the cry. So you want to be proactive. So in this ecosystem, we go deep into what is proactive leadership. Along with that, we talk about the corporate culture. Now, what exactly is the corporate culture? The corporate culture is the business oxygen and blood supply. And if you're not building out a healthy corporate culture, if your key focus is only on cash flow maximization, and the focus is now not on creating a healthy environment for all to coexist, you're going to have issues. And as we go deeper into today's program, I will explain to you why having a corporate culture is so important. Now, as I said earlier on, having a healthy and strong corporate culture is what we call the oxygen and blood supply to your company. And last week, we look a little bit more at this because we talk about the value proposition. We talk about the 4 important touch points of your VP. You need to think about this. If you don't have this, is another reason why your business and your brand will fail. The business success ecosystem also talks about the team dynamics. And how important is the team dynamics? It's absolutely necessary. Because here is where we talk about the 20-80 rule. Once you build out the corporate culture, the business ecosystem in the right way, it means now that you can apply the 20-80 rule, where you're able now to focus on the 20% of the task that is most important, and you're able now to delegate the remaining 80% out. It gives you time to function better at the strategic level. It gives you time to become the global thinkers, social actors, and transformational leaders. So each of the ecosystem that we will go through over a period of time, it is necessary. The fourth ecosystem that you will learn over a period of time is what we call the market research and market intelligence ecosystem. Why is this so important? It is important, why? Because in doing business, you want to be market oriented and you want to be market sensitive. Who is your target market? What are their needs and wants and expectations? What's the size of your market? Is it viable? Does it make sense to get into the market in the first place? These are questions that you need to ask yourself. And if you can't answer these questions, perhaps you don't have any, you shouldn't be in business. And what we do at Global Capital Inc. and 10X Branded and Marketing LLC is to provide business owners and business leaders with the kind of support that enables them to have the critical information so they can make informed and educated business decisions. Absolutely necessary. It goes deeper than this, but today I'm not going to go deeper into it. I'm just trying to help you to understand what the ecosystem represents. The other part of the ecosystem is what we call the capital markets ecosystem. And that's what we're going to dig deep into today. How important is this? Again, many businesses get started, and in getting started, you then start to think about where you're going to get a capital from. And in most cases, you are thinking debt capital. And in most cases, to access the funding from the DCM, the debt capital market, you have to have the pre-qualification criteria. You must reach the pre-qualification criteria. Now, in the absence of you reaching the pre-qualification criteria, it's going to prevent you from accessing the capital. So we'll go into that today. So these are important parts of the ecosystem that you need to take the time to truly understand. Now, another element of the ecosystem, I'm just going through them quickly, and then we're going to do the deep dive into capital market, is economic systems. It's what we call the economic system ecosystem. Now, how important is this? Now, the economic system is important for you to understand. And perhaps to many persons, they might have never heard about economic systems, but it's what we call planet economy. There's what is also known as mixed economic system, and there's also laissez-faire economic system. You need to understand it. And particularly if you are the kind of individual that is considering building a global brand. Understanding the impact of the economic system on your business decision process is necessary. And again, you want to be proactive about this. You want to know that you can think ahead where this is concerned, you can see beyond the problems, and you can take informed action to achieve the desired results. Absolutely necessary. The last ecosystem, and the seventh one that we're going to talk about today, is what we call the communication media ecosystem. How important is this? It's absolutely necessary, because if we're talking visibility, some of which we discussed last week, it's necessary for you to take the time to understand communication ecosystem and how to leverage and up-level all of these platforms to ensure that you're achieving the level of impact that you want to attain in business. So there is where you had a synopsis of what we call the business success ecosystem based on the research that we have done and based on the thesis that we have developed. Some has been published into book form. If you understand these ecosystems, any business that really takes the time to understand these ecosystems and are able to apply them effectively in the business processes, they will stand a much better chance to succeed. We talk about proactive leadership. We talk about the corporate culture. We talk about the team dynamics. We talk about market research. We talk about capital markets. We talk about economic systems. And we also look at briefly the communication media ecosystem. So the one we're going to dive into today is capital markets. So let's start the conversation now. All right, just bear with me. I'm trying to change the slides. Okay, here we go. All right, some important questions and I want us to talk about now. Let's go into the preambles. And I did mention this. The best time to access capital is when you do not want it. And that comes to the issue of business fundability. Why is this important? Now, the thing about it, you heard me said earlier on, most people wait until they need the capital like yesterday to go for the funding. And you need this funding again like yesterday because you want to cover overheads, you want to pay your staff, you want to, pay for the, office management, and you don't have the capital. And in most cases, when you now reach out to get those capital, you are not fundable. The business is not fundable. And our aim in working with clients is to ensure that you are fundable, all right? And we look at that today. Along with that, the next preamble I want us to look at is do not buy debt until you understand debt leverage. And this is something important for you to take the time to understand. Most people buy the debt when they're desperate. And in most cases, when they get access to the capital, the money goes into areas that it was not intended to be invested in. And that becomes a major problem because it becomes a bad debt. One of the things that we emphasize is that when you're going to buy debt, you want to understand clearly how you're going to cash flow that debt. All right. Most people buy a debt and the debt is a liability because you have not yet looked at cash flowing potential. You need to take the time to understand that. We'll talk about some of that today. And one person that, Ramsey, I think his name is, he said, let's stay away from debt. And he has a legitimate reason why he's saying that, because most people take the debt and they buy a bad debt. All right. And my advice to you, if you do not know what you're doing when you're buying debt, stay away from it. The third preamble that I want us to look at is what we're going to call debt mitigation can save you millions over the debt life cycle. So there's a number of things that's being said here. When you are taking that debt, you want to know that you can mitigate the debt process. It is your ability to mitigate the debt that will allow you to save on that debt portfolio. Now, let's talk about this a little bit. We're talking today about capital markets ecosystem. There are many options that are available to the business owner, the aspiring business owners, but in most cases, they are not aware of all of the options because, again, many persons who are getting into business, they may be getting into business based on a hunch, based on a desire to make more money, but many of them have never really taken the full time out to study business. So because of the fact that you may not have studied business in depthly, you don't have all of the answers. What we're going to be looking at today is the multiple of opportunities that are available when it comes to accessing capital. There's what we call the debt capital. And what exactly do we mean by debt capital? Debt capital simply means that you're now able to access the debt capital markets. But in accessing the debt capital markets, you need to understand it. It's absolutely necessary. And we're going to talk a little bit just now about, a number of things relating to the debt capital market. You also have the other option, which is the equity capital market. And here is where you have pre-qualifications that you would need to reach at all of these levels: debt, equity, and credit capital market. Now, to access the debt, and we look at the pre-qualification in the next slide, you need to take the time to understand what are those pre-qualifications, because in most cases, when you're unable to reach pre-qualification, you are unable now to access the capital. And when you become unable to access the capital, you become frustrated. And in many cases, you give up. And the evidence of this shows when we see 20% of business startups fail in the first year, 50% fail by year 5, and only 33% survive after the 10-year life cycle. And in most cases, many cases, it's largely because you did not access capital, neither debt, equity, credit, or smart capital. These are all financial tools that you need to understand. So let's move on. Let's go a little deeper into this. Global Capital Inc. and 10X Branded and Marketing LLC out of New York. As we work with the client and we are looking now at debt capital, it's important for you to understand 4 important concepts when it comes to the financial portfolio. Now let's take, for example, we're talking about the DCM, debt capital markets. What are the different debt portfolios that exist? And today we're just doing the surface information. We provide the client more in-depth information. But let's talk about the portfolios on the debt. Have you ever heard about overdraft? Now, in setting up your business, you want to register your business in the right way. You want to open a business account. And in most cases, when you're able to open a business account, perhaps an overdraft can be the first financial leverage for you to consider. An overdraft means that a special arrangement has been made with your bankers to allow overdraft up to a certain amount, which means that you can overdraft or spend money or pay money that you don't have in your account because it is an overdraft. These are techniques that you can use in terms of accessing the debt capital market, but the business has to be set up in the right way. And these are things that we help the client with. Now, along with this, we are not only looking at the portfolio, because an overdraft is one portfolio, but how about a line of credit? All right. Now, there's a loan, business loan, there's overdraft, there's line of credit. And all of this comes in the portfolio under the DCM. But as an entrepreneur, if you do not know this, you do not know how to leverage it, and you become frustrated. You may not be able to get a loan, but if you set up the business in the right way and register it properly with a financial institution, you may be able to get an overdraft. All right? So these are options that are available. So these are things that you would need to stop and think about. Now, if you have assets, you may be able to get a BLOC from the DCM, which is a business equity line of credit. And a business equity line of credit is different from a business loan. All right, it's different from the business loan. You may be also able to also get a HELOC, which is a home equity line of credit. Now, these are portfolios that are unique to the debt capital market. But if you do not know it, you cannot leverage it. And in starting a business and growing a business, you need access to capital. And you have all of these opportunities that are available to you, but you just don't know it. So if you don't know it, you can't leverage it. And that's another reason why you're going to struggle in business to raise capital, because you don't understand the portfolio. At Global Capital Inc., again, and 10X Branding and Marketing LLC out of New York, we go deep into this. Now, let's talk a little bit about the pre-qualification. If you look on your right-hand side, you will see debt pre-qualification. Now, depending on where you are in the world, the pre-qualifications may differ. But let us look at age, and age do matter. Why age matters? Again, depending on where you are in the world. A young person who might be 25 or 30, you will be able to get a business debt or a personal debt that can run for 20, 25, 30 years, or perhaps more, depending on how early you take that loan. And the longer the loan life cycle is, the lower your monthly debt obligation will be, all right? And these are things for you to consider. But let us suppose that you're in your late 40s and early 50s and you go to get a debt. Guess what happened? The life cycle of that debt is going to be shorter. And because the life cycle of the debt is shorter, the interest rate, your monthly debt obligation is going to be higher. But in most cases, you are not aware of all of this. But guess what else? Is there a way to mitigate this process? Yes, there is a way. So regardless of your age, if you have the right financial advisors, they can help you to navigate this process. In my experience, what happens, many persons will say, you know, when I was young, I didn't have the monies to go and buy my first home. Now that I'm an adult, I have the disposable income, but I'm older. I'm 45 and 50 and 52. And the bank said they can only give me the debt for 10 years. So the payback on that debt life cycle is going to be tremendously challenging for the average person. So these are some of the pre-qualification that you would need to consider, all right? Now, how about collateral? To access capital from the DCM, you also need collateral, all right? And here is where in many cases you have to leverage collateral from your mom and dad and, you know, families and friends, largely because you do not have the collateral. And people that do not know you may not want to put up cash collateral or fixed asset collateral for you to access capital markets. So largely because you are unable to leverage your personal collateral because you don't have it, it becomes more difficult for you to leverage other people's collateral in this case. Now, if your mom and dad have the collateral, they may be the willing candidates. But guess what happened? We have seen this happen many, many times. Mommy, daddy come in and they leverage their collateral for you to access the funding. But guess what? You're unable to reach the monthly collateralized amortized debt obligation, and you put mommy and daddy home at risk. All right, and this is another reason why we emphasize before you buy a debt, you want to ensure that you understand how to leverage that debt. You must understand the accommodators. You must understand the enablers to ensure that you can cash flow maximize once you take that debt, because the last thing that you want to do is to put your family assets at risk. So again, what we do at Global Capital Inc. and 10X Branding and Marketing LLC is to ensure that we provide our clients with a kind of information that allows them to understand how to buy debt, how to leverage debt, and how to mitigate debt. So far, we are looking at the debt pre-qualification criteria. Hey, Will, what's up? So, yeah, man. So it's important to really take the time to understand this. And this is the kind of information that we provide to the client, so the client is able to make an informed and educated decision. Now, once you have a business register, some institution may also ask about your team, because if you're taking $100 million, and you're the only person spending that money or managing that fund, I mean, it starts to raise some eyebrows. So some institution may ask about team dynamics, meaning that they want to ask about your strategic team, your tactical team, and your operational team. Because, with the right team dynamics, they're certain that you're going to be able to cash flow the debt and you would not default on that debt. All right, because the financial institutions too, remember, they may not be lending you their personal funds. It's depositors who are depositing their money, and they're taking those deposits and they're lending it out back to you. So they want to ensure that you can reach your monthly collateralized and amortized debt obligation. So these are important things to look at. Some institution, again, they will look at your corporate culture. Me as a private equity investor, venture capitalist, I look at this, and I'm going to talk about that when I get to the next slide. You want to support companies that have a healthy corporate culture. Now, as I look at healthy corporate culture, again, this reminds me of the 4 important touch points of the value proposition. An organization that has heavy absenteeism and heavy staff turnover, they're going to be companies that is going to be hemorrhaging financially, because every time you have to go through the selection, recruitment, and placement and climatization is downtime, and it's money to do all of that. So there's some financial institution in the DCM sense that will look at these things. Now, let's go to market analytics as another pre-qualification criteria. Here is where that you're going for funding, all right? You're going for funding, but you don't understand the market. And this is something that we talk about a lot. Who is your ideal customers? What is the size of your market? What is the potential of the market to cash flow? What is the competition? What are gaps in the market? So when you understand the market analytics, the market realities, and you're able to sit with your funding agencies and you're able to effectively articulate this, they are more willing to come and give you that support. Now, I'm not going through all of this to scare anyone, but this is the business reality. Many people want to do business without understanding the business process, and this is a critical part of it. The good thing about it is that you don't have to know anything. You just have to ensure that the third one, which is team dynamics, there's somebody in your team that are subject matter experts in these areas. All right, my role is to ensure that I give you the information. My role is to ensure that the business understand this process, so they are able to leverage it to get themselves prepared for funding, all right, for funding. Historical financial data. Now, when you go into the debt capital market, they want financial history. They are looking for financial history. And if you do not have financial history, it's a red flag for them, because it will say to them that you do not have the knowledge, the experience, you don't have a track record. And these are important things that they look at. So if you're not getting funding from the debt capital market, perhaps it's because you're not reaching a number of these pre-qualification that we're talking about. Access to debt is not automatic. But if you understand the pre-qualification criteria and you prepare yourself for them, it's much easier for you to access it. But remember, today we're not just talking about debt. We're talking about debt, equity, credit, and smart capital, because these options are available to you. And if you're in business, you want to leverage all of them. And as I said, you don't want to wait until you're ready for debt to become business fundable. You want to become business fundable now. That means that you have the information and you're taking the steps to ensure that you can win when it comes to access and capital. All right, let's go to the last one here, which is going to be on this table, which is financial projection and the profit sharing. Now, every time I look at this particular last heading, I have to laugh when it comes to financial projection. Because here is where we see many, many, many persons, young entrepreneurs, develop in their financial projections. And they are doing financial projections, saying to you that this is the potential of the business to cash flow with no market data to drive that decision. You means that you're speculating. So an experienced financial expert will say to you, give me the data that shows where you're extracting the information from to come up with your financial projection. To do an accurate financial projection, and financial institutions will look at this, you have to have either published data that is reliable, or you have to have primary data that you're actively involved with. In the absence of this, it means that you're using speculative data to do your financial projection. And experience funding agency will call you out on this. All right, it will call out businesses across the world on this. Our role is to ensure that we can help you to be solid and ready when you're going for financing. So these are just some of the pre-qualifications when it comes to accessing debt capital. Now, I'll go to the next slide now, which we're going to talk about equity capital. Now, again, in going for equity, it's important to also recognize that just like how we talk with debt, you have HELOC, BLOC, you have overdraft, you have line of credit. In the equity funding space, in the equity portfolio, you have a number of funding sources. And if you're in business, you also need to know this. For example, you have, venture capital, and venture capital is different from private equity investment. Now, a private equity investor may look at age, may look at collateral, may look at team. They may bypass collateral depending on the type of business that you have, because you might be looking for capital that will help you now to acquire assets, and they may be able to leverage the asset back into collateral, but they're going to look at your team. They definitely will be looking at your team dynamics. They're going to be looking at your corporate culture. They're going to be looking at your market analytics. They're going to be looking at historical financial data, because private equity investors, they are not necessarily investing their monies. They're taking their monies from SWF. If you never heard about SWF, it means sovereign wealth funds. And where does sovereign wealth funds come from? It comes from government. Government in middle income and developing economies, and they put their funds out there for boutique investment firms to invest them, and the boutique companies and the global intermediaries, they redistribute it out to the private equity investors. In other words, what I'm saying here, you are taking monies from funding sources that are taking government funds to reinvest, governments from around the world. That's one source. You're also taking money from pension funds. Pension funds, perhaps right in your country, when they collect the monthly pensions, what do you think they do with it? They put it in a savings account? Not necessarily so, perhaps some, but then they reinvest a large portion of it back into the market. And that's how you're able to access money from the private equity investors. In other words, what I'm saying, they too have risk. So because they have risk in lending you, they would want to do every single thing practically possible to safeguard their investment with you. And when you're going to them and you don't have a strong corporate culture, you don't have market analytics, you don't have data to drive your information, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think they're going to have confidence and trust to invest in you? No, that's not going to be a red flag, a red flag. All right. So it's necessary for you to understand these pre-qualification and ensure that you are prepared for it. Again, when we come in, is to help you to understand, one, the portfolio, and in terms of the equity portfolio, you have the private equity investors. On the other hand, you have VC, the venture capitalists, and the angel investors. Now, VC and angel investors, they may relax some of the pre-qualifications because we have heard about angel and VC who might invest with companies pre-income, meaning that they are looking at the market potential and they're looking at your market size. They are looking at the impact that your product can have on the market to influence their investment decisions. And just let me bring something right home to you here. The world was faced and still going through some aspect of the global pandemic. Let us suppose that you are a research-based organization and you are new, you have medical strength and experience, and you need now capital to invest because what you want to do is to come up with a cure for the pandemic. Now, because of the global scale of the problem, VC, venture capitalists who have that kind of liquidity might want to invest in you researching because that once you make that breakthrough, you're going to be generating billions of dollars and they're going to be making money. So if the project is attractive enough, you are likely to get some VCs to come on board to support your project. So it's important to understand this, and I'm going through this to really say that we at Global Capital Inc. and 10X Branding and Marketing LLC out of New York, we understand why businesses are failing. Many of them do not understand the financial platforms that are available, the capital market ecosystem. There are tons of monies available out there through the different portfolios that we're going to be going through here today. And if you understand them and position yourself to leverage them, perhaps by getting a PFA, a professional financial advisor, a personal financial advisor, you will access these portfolios at greater ease. So we're just discussing some of the portfolios. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to say, especially when it comes to private equity and the venture capital markets. In this case, it's not only accessing the capital, because when a VC or PE comes in to allocate funds to you, yes, they're going to help you scale and grow the business, but they're going to take a seat on your board and they're going to take a percentage of your business. And they're not there for the life of the business. They're only there for a period of time. It might be, 8 to 12 years. It might be pushed up, but 15 years. But guess what? When this portfolio reaches its life cycle, they want to exit. They will exit. All right. And their exit strategy is to perhaps to take you to IPO. You ever heard about IPO? It's called an initial public offer, which means that you're no longer a private company. You now become a public company. So a VC or a PE exit strategy is going to be taking you IPO or taking you LBO. You ever hear LBO, leverage buyout? Now, there is where they're going to find a company bigger than you to buy you out, and you could lose your business if that's not where you want to go. Because you may still have shares in the business, but they want to exit. Because I said early on, they have to pay back SWF, sovereign wealth funds. They have to pay back, insurance funds. They have to pay back pension funds. They have to pay back all the sources where they are taking capital funds, accredited investors and, university endowment where they are taking capital from, and they have to pay it back at a certain life cycle. So they have to enact their exit strategy. So these are important concepts that we will go into with the client to ensure that they're making an informed decision. Because when we hear equity, yes, you could access capital from the equity capital market, you get excited. But what happens when it comes to the exit? Are you prepared for this? Are you prepared to go public? Are you prepared to go LBO, leverage buyout? Are you prepared for all of these different things? you need to think through the process. And again, that's where we come in. And that is why we often say it's not just for you to understand the portfolio. Understand the pre-qualification criteria is important, and understanding the leverage. Because if you understand the leverage, you understand how to cash flow the debt. And if you understand the mitigation, you understand how to reduce the life cycle of it, how to cash out of it, and how to own your business 101% back. If you don't have this information, you could be choking yourself. Again, there's where we come in to ensure that you're seeing through the entire process and you can make an informed and educated decision about what you are doing. Now, remember, I'm going through all of this for the brand ambassadors. So you have the kind of information to better help you to represent Global Capital Inc., to better represent 10X Branding and Marketing LLC, so you understand some more of what we are doing. The next slide that I want us to look at is credit capital market. And perhaps credit is one of the easiest forms of capital access if you're properly prepared for this market. And again, the word is properly prepared. Now, to be properly prepared, again, the same principle applies. You need to understand credit portfolios. You need to understand the credit pre-qualification. Of course, the bar is much lower here. You need to understand credit leverage, because again, we see person taking credit and it turns out to be bad credit. And you need to understand credit mitigation. All of these things are necessary for you to understand, but this perhaps is the one, as an entrepreneur, you want to dive into this, you want to spend more time understanding this. Because yes, if you're a citizen in the United States, you have to have your SSN, which is your social security number. And that's necessary if you're leveraging personal credit. While personal credit is good, I believe it's not really good for business. And let me give you an explanation why. When you leverage your SSN to get access to credit, it's important to recognize that the more you utilize your credit line, it affects your credit score, your FICO score. All right. So with the main reporting agency, whether it's be TransUnion or Equifax or Experian, once those agencies are capturing your spending pattern and your utilization is high, you're going to have a very low credit score. And the lower your credit score, it's going to be more difficult for you to access credit. All right, because it's going to affect your credit score. If you're below 650, it starts to affect your potential to access credit. And of course, what we are talking about here is leveraging credit to put into your business. So the irony is that if you're leveraging personal credit, it's going to affect you. The reverse happens in business credit. The more you utilize business credit is the more, or let me rephrase this, the more you utilize business credit in a responsible manner, it opens up opportunities for you to increase the amount that you can get in credit. All right. So there's a major difference between personal credit and business credit. The one that I'm talking about is business credit. All right. Now, to get business credit, you need to have your EIN. Now, once you register a business, the particular state that you're in will issue with the EIN. This is the employer's taxpayer's number. All right. You will also get, if in the case of an individual, you will have the individual taxpayer's number. Now, these things are necessary in terms of starting to building up your business credit. All right. Of course, there are other things which are called the business essentials. You need to have all these things, a proper business registration with your address, proper, email address, telephone number. We talk about 441 in other programs. You need to have the business essentials all taken care of. And then you need to ensure that the business is reporting to the relevant agencies. All right. And just to give a quick recap on the key agencies, there's what we call the DNB, and the DNB will give you a DNB number. And once you have that DNB number is what's going to help you to get leverage. One of the biggest reporting agencies that you have in the United States of America is the DNB. All right. Now, the DNB will issue it a number, and when you leverage that number, that's a number that all businesses is going to be tracking to see, yes, you're registered here. Yes, what's your fundability, and it will open up doors. So that's one of the agencies. You heard me talk about also Equifax and Experian. Yes, you want Equifax, not personal, but business, and Experian business. You want to ensure that the business has visibility in these three reporting agencies. Now, once you have that, and that's easy to do, all right? It's easy, all right? From there, we go to things like trade line, we go to things like vendor credit and these type of stuff, and business credit. Those things start to open up. Now, the beauty about all of this is that you leverage this platform right. You can get 10, 20, 40, 100,000, $1 million in business credit. All right, you can get a lot of money in business credit. And this is something that you want to think about, you want to consider, because all of these options that are available to you. Our role, as I said earlier, is to ensure that we are providing business owners across the world, well, not all across the world, you're going to have access to all of these models. All right. So you have credit if you're in the United States and perhaps some other parts of the world. This is something that for you to leverage. But of course, for us, again, it's not just about accessing it. It's how to leverage credit, and it's how to mitigate it. All right. The thing about it is that if you understand the portfolio well enough, you hear me talk before about zero APR. The APR means the annual percentage rate. And if it is zero, it means that you can access $100,000. And if you have 0% APR for 6, 12, or 18 months, it means that you don't have to pay interest for that period of time. That is capital leverage. You wouldn't see this in debt. You wouldn't see it in equity, but you're seeing it in credit. All right, another advantage with the equity is that you don't have monthly debt obligation. You may have annual debt obligation. That gives you some more financial leverage. So these are important concepts for you to consider as we interface with the businesses. So it's not just about the value proposition, because the value proposition can be stagnant if you don't have access to capital. All right, the value proposition is one important area of the ecosystem. Understanding capital markets is another important part of the ecosystem if you want to be successful in business. Now we have smart capital. This is the one that I'm so excited about. Also, because with smart capital, you have some of the categories that I have here: bootstrapping, crowdfunding, sales funnel, quality contact. Now, to access these markets, if you look on the left-hand side, sorry, the right hand, it requires some social skills. You have to be proactive. It means that you must understand it and you must be able to think ahead. All right, you must have the proactive leadership skills. And if any of you have ever been into any of my program, you heard that I spoke so often about proactive leadership. You need this skill set if you're going to be leveraging this. The beauty, but if you're able to leverage some of these platforms, you don't have to pay back interest. You don't have to give away part of your company, and the monies you earn, all right, based on certain arrangement, whatever you earn is yours. You don't have to pay it back. And that's why we call it smart capital leverage. All right, these are creative financing tools. So you need to have proactive leadership skills. You need to be, learn the art of relationship and people skill. You must have relationship and people skills, and you must have a strong value proposition. Why the value proposition must be strong? Because here is where you want people to buy into you. If the value proposition is weak, you're not going to get public buy-in. All right. So that in a nutshell is our exercise for this week. And I now want to just open the floor for any questions that persons may have based on what we would have discussed. So this exercise was done today to really help brand ambassadors to get a better understanding of what we do at Global Capital Inc. And perhaps also with that added knowledge, you know now how to interface with people. What I must also add, in terms of credit, we represent perhaps the biggest credit institution in the US, which is Credit Suisse. They would have support close to 50,000 businesses to access business credit. And that is no easy milestone to have accomplished, but we also represent that brand. In terms of smart capital, we are working with many businesses to help them to also raise the capital. And once the capital is raised, it means that you don't have to pay it back. All right, but you must have the essential pre-qualifications, leadership skills, relationship skills, a strong value proposition to be able to leverage that. We are also working with other financial institutions to ensure that our clients are able to access capital from the various financial sources. So as you get it there, our focus here is not only on helping the business to understand management processes, marketing processes, branding processes, because we know once you get past this is where the fundability comes into play. All right, you will be more fundable once you're able to get past this scenario. Now, once you're able to get past this, all right, you have a strong value proposition, meaning that the 4 important touch points are adequately looked at, and you build out a strong business culture. We know with that, you are much more likely to be fundable, all right? And once you're fundable, we will then take you to the next level to access the capital. So with that being said, I'm going to now open up the floor for any questions that persons may have.
Thanks, Gary.
You're most welcome.
Brilliant presentation on the capital side of business. And what I also got is that the business have to be prepared so that they can have this type of capital, or at least get to that point. What we are doing is helping them to have the access, but also preparing them so that they can have the access as well for this type of capital.
Put on the light, Chair.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, sorry about that, Joan. You're perfectly correct. You're perfectly correct with what you would have said. And we are seeing, across the world, access to capital, people are waiting for 5, 10, 15 years for access to capital. And one, we're seeing mismanagement of the capital, even when they get grants. We see mismanagement when they get debt. And our mission is to ensure that we can provide businesses with the kind of information. So whether they're accessing debt, equity, or credit, they can access it in a responsible manner. They can access and exit and win. And the way they're going to be able to do that is to be able to see through the entire process. And that's where debt portfolio, debt access, debt leverage, and debt mitigation comes into play. Perhaps based on my research, perhaps we might be one of the only institutions that is providing this kind of holistic support to the client, because we're talking with top financial specialists. And when it comes to debt mitigation, they don't understand the language of debt mitigation. But what it means in our book is that you can buy debt, and regardless of how high that interest rate is, we can work with you to bring down that interest rate. All right. It's legally, the financial institution will not tell you how to do it. We know how to do it, and we work with you to ensure that you can leverage it.
Brilliant. I mean, even in our room, I mean, Manny, he actually did say a few times that one of the reasons why many businesses, and he didn't quote Black businesses as well, don't get ahead is because they don't have access to capital.
Exactly.
Only selective few who gets that.
Exactly. And even when a selective few gets it, because they get it from inside sources, they are also shown how to mitigate it. And they say, that the word is whispered to them, don't say it to anybody else, right? But this is how you can do it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's, while Manny would say, people of color, I agree with him. But I also believe, for me, the way that I see the financial market and global scenario, I see it from an elitist standpoint. All right, there's a privileged group of persons that are protective of their zone, and they keep information inside. So it's become an inside information thing. Some of those codes, because of my study at Rice University, Cambridge University, I'm able to crack some of those codes. And because of that, I now want to transfer this body of knowledge to businesses within our community. All right, so I think that for us, we are talking to everybody across the board, because we believe that, they're going to be a white person that is going to be struggling with this, because I'm on stage and I'm interfacing with white financial specialists that are not familiar with the term mitigation. And you have to give them now a walkthrough. But you made a very strong point, and Manny is right. Manny is perfectly correct. All right, Peter, Will, Randy.
Has her hand up.
You said something, John?
Priscilla has her hand up.
Oh, Priscilla. Okay, Priscilla, all to you.
Thank you very much for this enlightening lecture or session. And what you've really said, first of all, I was struck by what you said about you actually need to get you need to get your credit or debt early, because people tend to, as a business, people tend to hurry to look for loans actually when they need it, when in fact you should be doing it much earlier. I think a light bulb went out in me because you are helping us to understand where to get the funds when you need, to prepare first around the funds that you may need. That doesn't necessarily mean you get the fund immediately, but at least you've positioned yourself. I think that's the sense I'm getting from you. And then when you actually need it, you can draw it down. If you don't understand it now, then when you actually need it, it becomes more difficult for you to get through. So that's the first thing I heard. And then the second thing I wanted to say is, I don't tend to look at black, red, and what color. I think what you're doing is fantastic. The point is, it's really about information. Some people have paid the price for that information, and you have paid that price through your learning, and now you are bringing it down. What's wrong with the black race is that a lot of black people don't read. I don't mean they didn't go to school, they don't even read the red line. They won't even pay for a professional. I'm a professional, I'm a medical doctor, and I value professionals. I'm ready to pay the price, so long as I can get a good team around me. But many people don't. So thank you, because you've paid the price in your education, in your learning, and now you are bringing it down. So I really want to appreciate this. And then the final thought I wanted to bring out is that issue around this venture, trying to get capital from your relatives and friends. I think we'll need some help on how to navigate this, because a lot of Africans, let me talk about the Black race and the African people, a lot of women have tried to help their husbands or their partners. I don't know, for some reason, guys seem to have a bad credit. And then for the sake of the marriage, the sake of the children, you leverage, give your credit card or whatever, you borrow money, and then the guy doesn't get to do the business well. And you can't jump into the business either, because you are right there working, So I'm just wondering, how do you, I think there needs to be some advice to, women on how to manage their husbands out of their credit card, and then also how to manage our parents, because just like you said, well, a parent wants to help the son. Oh, you've got that fantastic idea, I want to help you. And then all you've worked for, the young guy, not that he may genuinely make a mistake. I'm not saying that I want to take the best scenario where somebody genuinely makes a mistake in his thinking, not really done his market analysis properly, and thinks he has a grandiose idea that everybody needs, when in fact he's not done his market analysis well. Now, having failed that, parents now have their houses at risk. So I need you to kind of help us to know how to manage these young children. Thank you.
No, I like that, and you were so correct, because, young people today, they're a little bit more outgoing, they may be a little bit more adventurous, and they may want to go into business. And after being turned down a few times by the bank, they may want ask mommy and daddy to support them. And they may be a little relaxed with that kind of support. And in being relaxed, when they get that support, they may put all of mommy and daddy asset at risk. And there's so many scenarios that I'm familiar with. I received a call a little while ago where a young lady, she didn't marry to the guy, but she had a kid for the guy. And she took her inheritance because she inherited the house from her parents, and he leveraged it to access capital to do whatever business. And when he received the monies a few months later down, he walked away from the relationship, and he wasn't paying the mortgage on a monthly basis. So guess what? The bank foreclosed. And when they came to me is when it's too late. Because, in cases like that, the asset itself may have equity. So instead of allowing it to go into foreclosure, you could have leveraged the equity, meaning that you could have find a buyer that's going to buy above the sum that it was borrowed again, pay off the debt, and at least you can at least walk away with the equity. Perhaps the equity itself might be enough for you to put down on another property and at least start from somewhere. But she wasn't able to start from anywhere, because she had to go with a friend, and then she wasn't comfortable at the friend, and she said she feels as though she's being a slave because the person says, say, cook for me, wash me, do this for me, take care of my kids. And that's the kind of scenario that he created for her. And these are real scenario. Mommy and daddy could be hurt because all of this savings it took to buy the house to help Sonny, to get into business. But Sonny's not responsible enough. So those are very strong points, Priscilla. And for us, what we do is to ensure that the client understands best practices and how to go about creating debt without all the risk associated with it and all the hurt associated with creating debt if you don't know what you're doing. So that was a great point. Peter? Priscilla, did I respond to you enough there? Just not Peter. Priscilla?
She's muted.
Yeah, probably she might be trying to get back on. All right, Peter, you go right ahead. You had, I see your hands is up.
Yes, Gary, I'm just want to tell you thanks again. Just to echo what Priscilla said, you have paid the price in gathering this information, and now you can dispense it to the community and empower a lot of people. And that in itself has nothing to do with color. Once information is what matters. And I think here in the United States, they make such a big deal about Black people and Black people being oppressed when we have people like Oprah and the Black president who have been into the White House. So it doesn't matter knowledge. Once you have knowledge, the right knowledge, nobody can keep you locked out of the door. So with that being said, the information that you do have, it is so much needed, as we have spoken about, where the partnerships that I am working with right now, the clients that I do have in pastors and ministry leaders. And I think, I'm glad that you invited me to this session, because now I'm able to communicate with greater value the level of information or the quality of information that individuals will have, these pastors, these ministry leaders, and how they themselves can empower themselves and the congregations that they represent. So again, Gary, great program. And as we have spoken, we're looking together to really change the community in the very near future.
Thanks for that comment, Peter. And we are now scratching the surface. It's a lot of information, but I clearly understand what you're saying. I do believe if more people can have this kind of information, I'm absolutely certain that they can lead a better quality of life. And this is a play on what we talked about yesterday, Peter, in the room. With the right information, people can empower themselves. Again, regardless of color, regardless of creed, regardless of religion, with the right information and the right support network, you're the only person that's holding you back. So I love that. Okay, Priscilla, I can see your hands is back up.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I think following on the last speaker, so as he was speaking, something came to my mind, and that's the issue around having a business and the registration. You talked about it's good for you to have a business and have some legal, the name, the address, emails, and get all the TIN numbers. I know it's different things in different countries, but the employer number and then the individual numbers, I don't know. You know your US terms, NIN, I don't know what you call it now, IEN or something. Okay.
Yeah, EIN in the US, you call it the EIN.
Yes.
Which is the employer's taxpayers numbers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you
So
have the ITN, which
yes,
is the individual taxpayers knowledge.
yes. So I just wanted to say that I've listened to Pastor Matthew Ashimolowo, who is in London, a big London pastor, and he has gone on to talk about wealth creation. He is one of the forefathers of wealth creation, especially in the Christian community in the UK. And one thing he consistently talks about is why you must open a company and why you must work on that company. He has a little ebook on 30 reasons why you must have a company. And when I reflect back and some of my friends reflect back, we realize that one of the mistakes we think we made years ago in some of the things we try to invest in would be our working as individuals. So I think, for you, you in the space that you are in, I think it's very important for you to let Black people know why they should really have a company and have the businesses. Because yes, you can succeed as an individual buying a few houses, but really when it's time to start passing it down to the kids, it becomes more difficult because you are leaving children, say for example in the UK, 40% tax. Which young person has 40% to pay? It means they have to sell the house before they can access the money, and they may not want to do that. But that's almost the only option they've got. So all my rambling is just really about helping Black people to know that if they are venturing into business, they should really do it as a business, not as an individual. Thank you. It's so difficult to shift from individual to business. It's better to actually work from being a business, no matter how small. Thank you.
Well, that's a good point. Um, there are a lot of advantages, also tax advantages, when you come together, when you start a business. All right. Those are things as time progresses, we will go deeper into them. But I love what you say, coming together as a team to create leverage. And I just want to give an example on this. One of the things that I have learned is that the wealthiest of people, they have community. All right, they have community. When you hear about the $1 million clubs and the $1 billion clubs, it's, these guys with disposable income, they come together, they pool their resources, and they create rotating approach where everyone within that collective can leverage those capital, divorce from debt capital market. Even the wealthiest of the wealthiest sometimes try to move away from the DCM, move away from equity, and some of them go directly to the public. Now, if you have ever observed Grant Cardone, who is perhaps one of the rising star in real estate today, he spent many years on the platform, but he's rising today. Because he positioned himself as to attract accredited investors, he is able to pull monies from the public, small amount of monies that he put back into his investment portfolios. Now, we don't have to pay the bank because he's not borrowing from the bank, but he's able to now transfer those benefits to the average individual. And, those are some smart ways to raise capital. All right, all the pre-qualification in this case, he creates an environment where he removes the pre-qualification to access capital because he now is setting those pre-qualifications for persons. So there's a range of things that we're going to get into, a lot of practical tools. Our vision here is to provide this body of knowledge to people in the business community and who is out there to ensure that they can win, all right, in the scenario of business and life. So great point, Priscilla. Will, how are you, Will? Any thoughts, any question?
Yeah, where were you 5 years ago? Just kidding. But more importantly, more importantly, I know this information needs to get out to people. People need to understand it and have access to it. But obviously, it has to be in stages. because
Yeah,
it's not
there's a lot of
always easy to
information, right?
understand. Exactly. It's not
Yeah.
always easy to understand. And while I would love to say here, like what I do, for example, I'm not sure I sell myself, but just to make it easier to understand. With what I do, I could say, here's your long list of things to do. And people are going to be like, wait, the mountain's too steep, the mountain's too high. So, it sucks that that's the reality. But, here we are, and we're going to hopefully change a lot of people to understand, at the very least, educate those who want to drink the water, or those who want to need the help, or those who have a business or whatever. That's a whole different story. But at least on the education level, that begins to change how people view themselves and mindset and a whole bunch of other stuff, which quality of life alone is a big deal. I can go on, but just the quality of life aspect is a huge deal, because if you're happier, then you have a better life. If you're more fulfilled, there's more hope, you have a better life. And this is one avenue. Look, there's different avenues, right? This is one very important avenue that isn't well known, isn't well discussed, isn't well open to the average human being. So, this is huge. And that's sort of the angle that I've been taking, in terms of getting people to at least listen to perhaps what I can call a watered down version, but not in that way, a way that might be more palpable, basically. And then from there, build step by step by step. That's where I'm going with trying to gather people from all over the US, to at least hear the beginning stages of it. They may not get the rest of it, but they can bring people in who need this information. And you build from there. You build from network to network to network to sort of wormhole your way through to the right people, who then sort of, build out from there. So this information is very, very important. I happen to agree with those, and I'll say it differently. Those of lower socioeconomic situations or status, yes, it's a huge deal, because they're disadvantaged from the beginning. They have less resources, less information, less even access to libraries in the US, which is a whole nother topic. But, I'll stop there, but you get the idea. And I look forward to be able to help educate others, and hopefully help other people in terms of their finances as well.
All right. Thanks for that share, Will. And you're making a very valid point. I am fully aware that if you're not familiar with the jargon, this information is, for many, it could be information overload. All right. So it's a good point. And what we intend to do, we only did it this way today to ensure that you have the broad picture. But as we decide to go into with a client, and Will, you know this, right? Because this is how we do it. We break everything down and then we build it up back. So we will
Correct.
take one concept, we will drill into it until they get it right, and then we move to the other concept. So you understand how we would apply it from that standpoint. So that's the same
Yeah,
approach that you're going to be using. So you have a valid
I,
point.
I agree with you. It's just a matter of, systematically and so on and so forth. So
Yeah, great point. Okay. Is Arthur, do you have any question, any comment you want to make?
It's Priscilla again.
Hi, Priscilla, go ahead.
No, I just want to follow on Will's thoughts. Will, I just want to say the Black community are as educated as they want to be. Sorry, I know you're not talking black and white or whatever, but there's this socioeconomic group. The point is this. Right now, the way I feel, we all have a phone. Most of us have a level of education, not because of my own high level, enough education for year 11. And I did a course called Plain English Language. So where I write to an 11-year-old, and many adults today are at 11-year-old at least of reading. Most people have a phone, and information is now to that phone, the Google. But the point is, when I look at adults in the Black community, let me talk about Nigeria, because I know that community. You just see people in the airport, wherever they're just doing WhatsApp and some funny stuff. The point I'm making is, if we want to learn, we can. And now you don't have to go to the library. the globe, the phone and the web has cut out the library right now. And we can actually, I know, yes, people are struggling for money and all that, but the point is, if you want to step out to the higher level, you have to pay for it. And that would be just data payment. So since many of us have some form of data, what do you call it? Monthly payments, we can use that phone to get as much information, no matter how basic, access all the libraries, access through Google, that's information to get you out of that financial, out of the lower socioeconomic status. It all starts with our mindset. But a lot of the people in the Black community, you use those phones, actually have the best phones, and are not even using those best phones to access the information they need to get out of the best and pay for the phones they are holding. Thank you.
Priscilla, if I may, I agree with you, but here's where I understand it a little bit differently. If you understand how algorithms work when we talk about Facebook and others, because right now the phones are literally creating certain behavioral loops within us. I know how I sound, but if you take it on a very simplistic level, just very simplistic, the phones, so a company starts off trying to make some money, get some clients, and go from there. At some point, though, a company hits a plateau, and then they're like, "How can we get more money?" And that's when Facebook and others started to create algorithms to get people to look at screens for longer, to go to Facebook more often, to do things more often, whether it's Facebook or Netflix or anything, including Google, believe it or not. And so the question is not what you're saying, I agree with you, but it's also that if anyone in any lower economic community, they're more likely to watch, sports or Netflix or whatever, or even Facebook, as opposed to going on and learning stuff on educating themselves. You're an educated person. I believe you said you're a doctor, okay? And therefore, being an educated person, there's certain epigenetics within you that allow you to have certain gumption behaviorally, as it goes thoughts, emotions, behaviors, okay? And therefore, within you, you're able to have certain gumption that others may not be able to have. And I'm not saying it's their fault. I'm simply saying it's lack of education. And people can change quickly. It takes for any hold on 1 second, for any habit, it takes 254 days, okay? So that 18-day turnaround is the key point. It can happen quickly, but it takes time, and it takes patience, education, and getting through to people. And so I hear what you're saying 100%. A part of it is people sort of revert back to old habits, old ways. Oh, I'll just watch Netflix again. Oh, or whatever. Oh, I'm discouraged because I'm hearing this stuff and Gary's speaking with words I don't understand. Like the cartoons where the guy's eyes are, the white and red and going in circles, and I don't understand anything. Okay. Nothing against Gary. I mean, I understand as I've educated myself. You, ma'am, have as well. Others in this room have as well. But this is a very important conversation for us to be having, because it boils down to other aspects as to why people don't access information. Yeah, they can go to libraries. They can on their phone too, like you're saying. It's about making the library come to people, so to speak. And there's a right way to do it that galvanizes, or sorry, not galvanizes, that allows them to feel comfortable. And that's why I said what I said before. I agree with you, but there's elements that need to be tweaked a little bit, because again, people really are becoming behaviorally, perhaps addicted, perhaps whatever, to whether it's certain applications or part of their phones or whatever. And again, the wealthier don't usually have this. This is sad, but this is true stuff. Look at the facts. Look at the stats. Okay, upper middle class and so on and so forth. Less so, but there's still issues, and these things become very, very important. So I'll stop here, but I hear you. But there's nuances that matter that affect how people will go to their phone, and that's why I said what I said as well. So I hear you, but thank you. Let me speak again.
Gary, could I just chime in a few minutes as well? Gary?
Yeah, Peter, go right ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciate the conversation as it is right now, and what Priscilla, both what Priscilla said and what Will responded, both is something that I myself am grappling with as well, because I was surprised when I was doing the research to build our business about 7-10 years ago. I was shocked that I went to YouTube and saw information that students were paying $50,000 at Ivy Leagues colleges and universities, and they tape that information and they place it on YouTube. And I was shocked how I was there to get all this information for free. I was shocked. So to what Priscilla is saying, and that was my thought process. Why aren't people gravitating to this instead of watching the dancing cat and all that stuff that is being given so much through Instagram and YouTube and Facebook, so to speak? But then listening to what Will is saying, he's making a valid point, because these companies have made investments to keep people in this in this loop. And I myself have fallen as falling into that situation. Sometimes I will just go on, go to check my Instagram account, and then I start to, scroll, and before I know it, it's 15 minutes, half an hour, and I've got to catch myself and says, what am I doing? And pull myself out of that. So what is the solution? This is where the church plays, Gary, coming back to our target. This is where I believe the church plays a very important part, to speak first of all to the congregants, the individuals that are devoted to the call, and to get individuals to grasp this kind of information that you're teaching. And if we can now use this, and that is my goal actually, as a means of evangelism, to have people to think differently, to say that the way you're going to change your life, yes, you're on your way to heaven, and it is important to do so, but while you're here on earth, these are some things that you need to do to live a quality way of life. And then if we could get that now to the cousin and the aunt and the brother and the sister and the grandmama and the grandpapa, then we can shift this right back now to what Priscilla is saying. And then we can circumvent what Will is saying. And by some way, some form, we'll be able to generate some kind of impact in our community. But something has to be done. Listening to what Will says, I'm listening to what Priscilla says, something has to be done, and it has to be done now, because we are going too much into a trajectory which the humanity as a whole is in danger if something is not done quick, fast, and now. Thank you so much again, Gary. Gary, if you see me jump off, I should have gone to another appointment at 4 o'clock. So I'm going to jump off in the next couple of minutes. But thanks again for what you're doing.
I want to ask Arthur, because Arthur, this is his first time. I'd like to ask Arthur if you have any questions, Arthur, with regards to what was shared earlier on. Arthur?
Yes, I don't know if you can hear me. My network is a bit glitchy. Thank you.
We hear you, Arthur.
I'll be honest with you. I just wanted to ask. Where can I get this recording, because I need to study it. I need to really study what you said. You, as someone mentioned, you gave us quite a significant amount of information, and just for me to process it, I would really love to listen to it again. Thank you so much.
All right. What we're gonna do, we will upload it to the group. John, he's in the group already. All right.
No.
He's not in the group. Or what I will do, I will prepare it, I'll send it out to Joan and she will get it to you. Okay? All
Gary,
right.
Sorry,
All right.
sorry, that's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for the well. You know what? I went to accounting school. I got a degree in accounts, and just from the first 5 minutes, I was like, wow, they didn't teach us a lot of this stuff
So,
in class. So thank you
so
so
you
much.
are an
Yes.
accountant. You are an accountant author.
Yes, I'm actually a graduated accountant, but I was still struggling to hear exactly what I was like. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
skipping. Yeah, so
They
thank you.
don't teach you guys these things in accounting school.
No, they don't.
I know.
You know what?
I
I
know.
was I was having this argument with someone now saying that after I left school, I struggled to find a job. So I had to start my own business, and I struggled to even do an invoice. They don't teach you. I spent 4 years in school and they never taught us once how to invoice a client. I'm like, but I'm an accountant. I should be able to invoice a client. No, they don't teach you that. They don't teach you how to be a business person. They teach you how to be an employee. So thank you so much. Done speaking.
You're welcome, my friend. Welcome. Joan will get it across to you. Priscilla, um, Priscilla, and then we're going to close off. Priscilla? Oh, is Peter, your hands it up again, Peter?
He didn't put his hand down.
Okay, okay. Priscilla, I saw you had your hands up early on. Is there something you want to contribute?
Okay. No, I was just going to echo what the pastor said, the guy that's went off,
Oh,
to
Peter,
say,
yeah.
yeah, to say that I know that's not what this is all about, but a lot of people are Black people tend to be in the faith community, and to say the pastors have a very big role to help us rearrange our position. I would say Pastor Matthew in UK, when he came about 30 years ago, or 34, about 35 years ago to UK, he was appalled by the fact that a lot of Africans were at the lower part of the ladder. People weren't even taking mortgages and all that stuff. He went to all the banks and read, collected all their mortgage books, read it, and started pushing for Africans to own their houses. And then there was an avalanche. And, a lot of us today are, I'm amazed. I'm in UK at the moment, so just to let you know, but Gary.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I want to also say, just with all fairness to some of the banks, Peter, I don't know if you can recall, this was about 5, 6 years, 7 years ago, I think it was. We were doing some work with the banks, and the banks were saying to us that they have these mortgages that families are not taking. And I don't know if you can remember, Peter, when we were going to rent that venue and to host a couple of programs, and they were saying, they're going to come and support the process. So we know that banks in the US that wants to give, families capital to invest in home ownership, but we have to now educate the families about the importance of home ownership. So there's a lot of work has to be done, Priscilla, a lot of work. Yeah, Peter, I was asking, can you recall us going into the bank and when we
Yes.
were about to, and
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
I remember so well, Gary. And yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. All right. With that being said, I want to thank everyone. Okay, well, go ahead.
Oh, is it real? Okay.
Joan, go first.
No, I want to say, as somebody who has been a mortgage broker and a financial advisor over 30 years, I actually had A little different experience because most of my clients reflected me, and I helped a lot of them to have their own homes, and now I speak to some individuals and I say, if you'd known me then, you would have owned your own home. I'm sure.
Definitely.
A lot of people are afraid and also they don't know. So it is not really, they want someone to talk to, because if you go to the bank is working for, the person at the bank is working for the bank. They're not working for you. They wouldn't tell you the know-how.
Yeah,
That's-
that's true. That is true. And we will use this platform to educate our community,
Oh, Holy Spirit.
business and beyond.
Yeah, I had
Great
a
point, Joe.
very easy suggestion. When you asked Joan to distribute a copy of that video, there's a very easy way to do this. If you already have a Gmail account and you create a Google Doc, it takes not more than 3 minutes to do this. You create a link to that Google document that you can then send out to specific people. So if I wanted a copy of it, or if I wanted to look at it again, all you have to do is send me the link so that I can just look at it, but I can't copy it. And therefore, anyone can go on. You don't have to have attachments sent by email. It saves a lot of issues in terms of emails not being able to send attachments and the file is too big. It's a much simpler, easier way, in my opinion. I don't mind setting up for you guys. Let me know. I have time tonight. But I don't want to step on anybody's toes. So if Joan's doing it, no problem. But my suggestion would be a Google Doc where you can then have a link to the video or videos, all these videos, one of the videos, whatever you choose to do. You can have different document folders and have different links if you want. Depends how you want to structure it. But that's how I do a lot of my stuff now, is by Google Docs. Just my 2 cents, if I may. So
All right. That's some good advice. That's another option. But we don't have a problem with the information going out there. We want the information out there of what we are talking about because it's part of putting the brand out there. So it's going to be uploaded to a link where we can have global access. That's one way. But we will also take your suggestions also, Will. That's a great point.
no problem.
John, can you send a copy across to me when you finish? All right, thanks, Will. Thanks, Arthur, Peter, Priscilla, Jed Thompson, who's quietly there. We will do this again next week and do our best to get the information out so we can start to build up this community and start to ensure that we are giving our brand ambassadors the kind of information that they need so they can go there and champion the cost. All right, thanks, John, again for facilitating this process.
Before we close, next week, which is the 23rd.
Oh yes, yeah, go ahead.
We have a free introductory
mastermind
or at 7 p.m. UK time, which is like an hour before we start here, for business owners. So if anyone has any business owners, please lock them in. But at the same time, we wouldn't be having our mentoring program at this time, would we?
No. The program that we're going to be doing is going to observe all that. So, we have a masterclass next week. We have a number of persons from different parts of the world who would have signed up already for this. So in your network, do invite persons, it's free. We'll try to get a link out to you earliest so we can get that information out.
Just to make sure, if I may ask, 7 p.m. UK time, we're talking about Western Europe. So therefore it's 6 hours ahead from Eastern Standard Time.
I think it's, John, you're mute. I think it's 5 hours ahead, right?
Eastern EST. Yeah,
it's gonna be 2 p.m. EST.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
2 p.m.
I just wanted to
EST.
double check the time. Okay, that's important. Yeah, send me the link and I will begin to really reach out to people. Because that's 11 a.m. Pacific, so I could probably get East Coast and Central. I don't know about West Coast people, but I'll do what I can.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
11 specific.
Yeah.
Okey-dokey. All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, John, and we'll talk soon, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, John, Arthur, Priscilla, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Happy Easter.
Same to you, same to you.